theswirlworld.com, podcast episode 144.
The Swirl World.
Interracial.
Diverse.
Beautiful.
When did it become a thing to settle for less? When did it become a thing to settle? It means to be satisfied with less. And something that I tell women repeatedly, someone who tells you your standards are too high is really telling you that they don't meet your standards. That's what that means. Because someone who can meet it is not going to think it's too high. Hello, beautiful people. This is Michelle Matthews-Calloway, also known as a Swirl Girl, coming at you on behalf of theswirlworld.com, where we celebrate Black women, mind, body, soul, and spirit. We do this over on our blog at theswirlworld.com, on our Facebook page at The Swirl World, on our sister Facebook page at Black Women Are Beautiful, Powerful, Everything, and also on Twitter, Instagram, and just about anywhere on the web. Today's show is a special one. We are now in the month of March, and I thought about doing a March Madness series. Shout out to those of you who have been responding to the What's Love Got to Do With It series we did in February. And I thought about flipping the script and looking at kind of the crazy side of quote unquote love. And I put love in quotes because some of this behavior that's going on, I can't really call it love. And y'all know I talk a lot about the importance of knowing your worth and value. Well, when people don't know their worth and value, they mistake certain things for love, or they engage in certain behaviors, all in the name of love. But what's happening is that they're not loving themselves. Now, today's episode is entitled, When Did Settling Become a Thing? And it's the audio from a Facebook Live video I did where I was responding to a video done by a young lady who was talking about men as predators. I'm using it to kick off the March Madness series because, well, listen to what I'm covering in this podcast episode and you'll understand why. When did settling become a thing? Now, in some parts of the audio, you'll hear me responding to people who caught me live and were posting comments. So just follow along, and I'm sure the message will come through loud and clear. Sit back, buckle your seatbelt, and get ready for When Did Settling Become a Thing? Hello, everybody. How are you? This is Michelle Matthews-Calloway coming at you again on behalf of theswirlworld.com. Our overarching mission in the Swirl World is to see Black women live their best life, and hence the reason for my rant today. I had originally planned to talk about fetishes because we're doing a series entitled Dating, Mating, Relating 101. But I decided to just kind of digress a little bit because I had to get something off my chest. I don't know how many of you have seen this. It's a video of a woman, a Black woman, and in a sense, she's ranting or going in about the sorry state of men and the, in a sense, foolishness that so many women have allowed, herself included, in her life. I saw this video late last night. It was posted in a group that I'm in, and I looked through the whole video. I think it's about 14 to 17 minutes long. And she was very passionate about what she was saying, and I understand her passion. I appreciate the fact that she made the video, appreciate the fact that she got those sentiments off her chest. But it raised a question in me. And let me tell you a little, before I get to what it did to me, let me get a little into what her video was about. But she was talking about how men make these demands on women, but so often the ones who make all of these demands and have all of these requirements bring so very little themselves to the table. And even in that, She was angry or was frustrated at the fact that women settle for that kind of treatment. Women buy into that kind of mindset where a man who, in a sense, has nothing in comparison to what she has, lets him dictate the terms of their relationship, lets him devise standards that she has to align with in order to be with him. Now, understand what I said. He, in relation to what she has nothing other than the fact that he's a man. But he wants to set terms and wants to set all the boundaries in the relationships. Can you cook? Asking women these types of questions. Where do you work? How much money do you make? And she was very frustrated at the fact that she had permitted this type of behavior in some of the relationships that she had been involved in. While I applaud her for speaking out and talking about the fact that she was sick and tired of these types of things happening and sick and tired of the men who project these types of demands and standards on women when they themselves have nothing to offer. They don't bring anything to the table. They don't come with anything that they're offering. It's all about what she has and what she can do, and having the audacity to want to set terms for that. I appreciate her frustration and I applaud her for speaking out and saying how ridiculous that is. And she even talked about her father and how she knew better. She was raised in a home where her father went to work, where her father didn't rely on her mom and then her stepmother for income. He didn't lay around the house all day while they were at work and then expected them to come home and cook for him who had been home all day doing nothing. Her father had not been that kind of man. So she had seen a viable example of manhood, a viable example of a man who believed in taking care of his family, a man who assumed his rightful place in the home as the leader, as the protector, as the provider. And I know these types of terms may seem old-fashioned to a lot of people, and that's okay with me because what I'm seeing is that old-fashioned worked. Old-fashioned is what permitted my own mother to be a stay-at-home mom. Until my baby brother graduated and went off to college, my mother did not go outside of the home to work. My father earned a living. My father, and again, when she was talking about her father, I thought about my own dad, who was a military man, 23 years in the Army. We were able to live all over the United States and all over the world. But he brought his check home. He enlisted in the Army for 23 years. And then after he retired from the military with disability, after having fought in wars, he went to work at the post office. We lived in one city and he lived in another. And I remember, this was before direct deposit was a thing. I remember my dad express mailing his paper check, his check home, so my mother could deposit it and take care of the bills for her and his 3 children. I remember him taking only a certain amount of money to live on. He worked in another city to earn a living so my mother could be a stay-at-home mom and raise their 3 children. So guess what? I had an example too. I had an example of a man who brought something to the table, a man who was proud of the fact that he could earn a living and take care of a wife and children, not a man who was expecting someone to take care of him. Eugenia is saying it's about options. I'm glad I found the option to stay at home with my boys. And yes, the lost art, Adrian is saying, of being responsible. When did it become a thing to settle for less? When did it become a thing to settle? And when you settle, and let me define it because y'all know how I am. I'm very big on words and what they mean. And Eugenia is saying her dad did the same thing. He gave his check to her mother. My dad would just sign the back of his check. He would endorse it and put it in an express mail envelope and send it to my mother. And you have these quote unquote men, and yes, as I'm using the term Adrian uses air quotes, I'm making these air quotes, these men who have the audacity and the nerve to want to know how much a woman makes. What is she bringing home? I don't understand that. When did that become a thing? And this lady was saying she was raised with a good example of a home, a good example of a man who was a provider, and she settled for less. And I was defining the word settle. It means to be satisfied with less. And I'm not talking about unrealistic expectations. I'm not talking about people who want to marry Brad Pitt. And I'm just using him as an example. I'm not talking about unrealistic expectations. I'm talking about the basics. And Adrian is saying, my father made sure we had what we needed. You know, the act of love. Exactly. Love gives. Love is not designed to take. It's giving. And Eugenia is another example of a stay-at-home mom. She has twin boys. Her husband goes to work. He's an engineer. He goes to work every day. And his expectation of you're the mother of my sons, and I want you to nurture them and raise them and take care of them. Eugenia's saying, I don't know when it became okay not to care for your children. Exactly. And in the Bible, if a man didn't care for his family, he's an infidel. And that goes back to, what a lot of people poo-poo as tradition. And, we live this is the 21st century and it's a new day. And you know what? Y'all can have it, because I'm not about to take care of a grown man. I'm just not going to do it unless I'm married to him and he is ill. Other than that, it's not happening. That's not how that works. That's not how that's supposed to work. And she bemoaned the fact that she had settled for less. And I asked myself, I'm like, when did this become a thing? When did this become okay? When did it become okay for women to feel like they had to meet these standards that are set, and again, set by these men who bring nothing to the table? They're living off what you do. I remember being at a job where the guy was driving the girl's car and dropped her off at work, and he went back home. Like, where they do that at? Where does that happen? And Karen is saying some people think the idea of an independent woman means a man doesn't have to give his all. And that's so not true. And I'm not going to get into this. A real man does this and a real man does that. That term real man, I think to a certain extent has been overused. I just say a man, because if you're existing, you're real. I'm here. So, we put these labels on things, but a man takes pride in what he's able to do and what he's able to provide for his own family. And talking about men walking away from children, that's a whole nother Facebook Live that I can go into. Grown men who procreate, and really that's what you're doing, procreating. You're bringing children into the world, and then you walk off and leave them. When did that become okay? And then what gets me is that you have these women who know these men have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids floating around with all these different women, and yet they still engage in a relationship with that man. What in the world can he do for you? And not only engage in a relationship with him, but have a child herself. When did that become okay? When did settling become a thing? And when I did the series on Vetting 101 and talked about boundaries and your toolkit and how you have to have standards, you have to have negotiables and non-negotiables, you have to have boundaries, you have to have deal breakers. These are things that you set up because you know your worth and your value. You know what you bring to the table, and you have, rightfully so, a certain expectation of the treatment that you want to receive. You have a certain expectation of what that other person, the dynamic that they're going to bring to the relationship. And if they can't bring it, that means it's a deal breaker. That means they don't fit. That means they're not for you, period. And Eugenia is saying I could never date a man that didn't care for his children. That tells you something about his character, and it's not good. And that's true. And if he doesn't take care of the children that he has with Susie and Sally and Janie and Josie, what in the whole entire world makes you think he's going to take care of yours? I was disturbed. On the one hand, by that video, I applauded her for speaking the truth. But you know what really disturbed me? There were so many women who were putting in the comments, yes, preach, you're giving me life. This is true. And I'm thinking, all of y'all, when did that become a thing? When did you start settling? And you must have the strength to stand your ground, Adrian, saying yes, because you will be told your standards are too high. And this is so true. And something that I tell women repeatedly, someone who tells you your standards are too high is really telling you that they don't meet your standards. That's what that means. Because someone who can meet it is not going to think it's too high. And Eugenia is saying I was never going to live less than I did as a child. And I lived good as a child. Yes, Eugenia, me too. I'm raising my hand. I had a great life. I had a wonderful father. I still do. And I thank God that he's still alive. A man who lived up to his responsibilities, who took pride in the fact that he had a wife and 3 children he was providing for. He wasn't ducking and dodging and palming off his relationship on the government or someone else to come along. And shout out to all the men who are stepping up to the plate. One of the things that I want to say about the swirl world is we don't bash men. We don't bash men. We don't put men down. Adrian and I have been surrounded by good, solid examples of men who fulfilled their responsibilities and did what they were supposed to do. You don't have to put anybody down in an effort to elevate someone. But what we do is encourage women to have standards, have some boundaries, set some goals for your life. When did it become a thing to settle for less? And there are 2 other points that I want to make that I find extremely troubling. I work in the criminal justice system. Can't go into a lot of details about what I do because, you know, we sign confidentiality agreements. But on a daily basis, I see people coming in, process paperwork for men who have entered into the justice system because of something they allegedly did. And in filling out the paperwork or assisting them with filling out paperwork, there's a section where they have to talk about if they own or rent their home or other. And all too often the check box is other. And then there's a second set of questions where the person has to say if they don't, if they're not renting or owning, if they're in a sense not head of household, who are they living with? And guess what the response is? My mother, my grandmother, my auntie, my sister. And yet these are the same men living with their mother, their grandmother, their auntie, and their sister who want to make demands on you and want to know how much you make and want to tell you you need to cook and all the things that you need to do. And they still live with their mom. And Eugenia is saying they mama. Yeah, they're living with their mother. And then they leave their mother's house to come and live with you in your nice house, your condo, your apartment, and want to ask what you cooking. Where they do that at? They do that in places where women settle, where women decide or seem to think having a quote unquote man is more important than their own self-worth and dignity. And miss me with all this, oh, you're just being divisive. And how am I being divisive to tell you to live your best life? How am I being divisive to say that you deserve better? How am I being divisive in telling you that you are a woman of worth and value and you deserve good treatment? You deserve to be taken care of. You deserve to be loved and cherished. Yeah, men had to have results not potential. That's right. And that's another thing. Buying into his potential. Oh, I know what he can be and I know what he can do. Why isn't he doing it? Why isn't he already there or well on his way there? And Adrienne made an excellent point. She said, Black women are the only group that are told to settle. And that's so true. I see women of all ethnic groups, and I could name them all, and they have standards. They're not told, well, he has potential. He's trying. He's living in his mama's house and eating her food and soaking up her air conditioning, but he's trying. Many women don't think they deserve better. Yeah, and she says, listen, I'm the queen. I'm the queen too, Eugenia. Yeah. When did settling become a thing? And the other point I want to make that is so heartbreaking, going back to what I was saying about being in the justice system, that's so heartbreaking is that, again, I see so many women who they have the houses and they have the condos and the apartments, and they bring these sorry men, and I'm using that word and I'm not taking it back. They bring these men into their homes where they have children. And I want that to soak in, because these men, and she was saying, you can put in the Facebook search bar if you want to find it. She was saying these men are predators. That was I think the title of her Facebook video. Predators into their homes with their little daughters and their little sons. Doesn't have a stable work history. Always talking about how the man is trying to hold him down and the man is holding him back. And if he had a job, it was 3 years ago. But you bring this person into your home with your little girls and your little boys. He's trifling. Yeah, Eugenia used that term. He hasn't shown any kind of stability, any kind of value that would even make you remotely want to date him, much less live with him and bring him into your home. And there's something very wrong with that picture. Why is he moving in with you? Where does he live? What does he do? What does he have to offer? And I'm not a fan of shacking. I'm not a fan of living with someone. Get married. And again, that's a whole nother Facebook video. But I see time and time again these heartbreaking instances of sexual abuse. And who's the perpetrator? It's this person that this woman has brought into her home where her innocent children live. Not only that, what lessons are we teaching our daughters and sons on what's a healthy relationship? That's so true. That's why children are having children. Yes. What are we teaching them? What kind of example are we setting for them? We're setting the example that you're not worthy, so you have to settle. You're not worthy, so you have to take care of him instead of the other way around. And predators are looking for overwrought single mothers. Yes. And, women have this, we want safety. We want security. We are nurturers. And they leverage those qualities. They leverage those characteristics and traits to their own selfish advantage. And then, it's mind boggling. You leave and go to work and leave this person in your home with your 6-year-old and your 4-year-old and your 12-year-old. It's very sobering, but I see instances of it almost every single day. And these predators prey on not only that single woman, but also her children. I'm asking the question, when did settling become a thing? And I want to encourage you, woman, know your worth and know your value. Set standards for yourself. And when I did the series, I talked about how the standard is the minimum threshold. There should be a minimum threshold that this individual has to meet to even be remotely considered. And if they don't meet the threshold, they're not the right person for you. Point blank, period. Don't operate from a scarcity mindset that makes you think, oh, if I don't take him, I'm not going to have anybody. Guess what? Having nobody is a better option than having somebody trifling and somebody that you have to take care of, who has the audacity to make demands on you and asking you what you cooking. Have some standards. Have some boundaries. Have some deal breakers. If he's married, guess what? It's a deal breaker. He's not available. He's, on paper anyway, committed to someone else. And if he's trying to come at you or flirt with you or want to have a relationship with you, his being married is a deal breaker. He is not available. He is not someone you can have, and therefore he's not someone you want. You don't know how many stories I see in Washington of a boyfriend abusing a child, a woman he's living with. It's shameful. It is shameful. It's disgraceful. I think one reason when Black women were constantly told they were undesirable by our own men. And yeah, that's true. And you know, it gets into your psyche and you start believing the hype. You start believing that you don't have worth and you don't have value and you have to settle. No, you do not. There are plenty of men who are good men who value responsibility, who take pride in being providers and leaders, who take pride in being the father of children that they take care of. Don't develop a scarcity mindset that makes you think that the only thing that's available is the few little pitiful men you see around you. There's a whole great big world out there. There are over 7 billion people on this planet. All you need is one. Don't buy into a scarcity mindset or a mindset that's centered on lack, that I have to do this. I have to settle for him. I better take him because somebody else may not come along. And what's so awful is that some of these men even tell women that, oh, nobody else is going to want you. Says who? Says you with no job? Says you living in your mama's house, who's never bought a home, who doesn't even pay rent on an apartment, who's never signed a lease? Yes, and men do not limit themselves on why they date and marry. They don't. Black women, yes, are the ones who are told we have to, in a sense, keep the race going. No. Go where you are celebrated and appreciated. There are men who will respect you and value you and prize you. But guess what? You have to do that first. You have to respect and prize and value yourself first. And Eugenia, you're so right. The scarcity mindset is dangerous because it makes you do things and make choices that are not in your own best interest. I want to shout out the woman who did the video on predators. Shout out to her for, in a sense, coming to her senses and recognizing the destructive patterns of behavior that she was engaging in. Shout out to her because there are people that she reached that I may not be able to reach. Her message resonated with those women, and hopefully they will take her message to heart and change their behavior. If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you always got. If you always settle for less, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get less. I want to encourage you today to know that you are beautiful, you are powerful, and you are everything. But you have to know that and you have to believe that. And when you know it and believe it, then you're going to govern yourself accordingly and you're going to act like it. Thanks again for those of you who came on today. I appreciate the interaction. Appreciate those of you who caught me live and those of you who may be catching the replay. Please share this video with someone you love, someone that you believe needs to hear the message. Settling is not a thing. It's not an option. And there's nothing wrong with having standards. There's nothing wrong with knowing that you are a person of worth and value. And there's nothing wrong with having a certain criteria for the men you will allow. And notice I said that word, allow, into your life. but you have to know it and believe it first. Thanks so much for joining, and appreciate you. I'll be back again talking about dating, mating, and relating 101. You guys have a wonderful day. Take care. And that wraps up our show for today. Send me an email and let me know what you thought. I'd really like to hear what you think about when settling became a thing, or if the things I shared, either pro or con, were some things that you could relate to. I appreciate the feedback that I've been receiving, and I want you to know it means a lot to me that you listen to this podcast. Until next week, you stay out of the March Madness, and we'll be back to talk about it some more. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to like the Swirl World on Facebook and subscribe to the blog at theswirlworld.com.
Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast or listen directly from our Facebook page.
We can also be heard on SoundCloud and Stitcher Radio.
The Swirl World.
Interracial.
Diverse.
Beautiful.